receiving validation of seasons of becoming birth. Just there she is. Perfect.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
My
Hi.
our other Khia is going to be here.
Hi.
Oh my goodness. You just reminded me.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Khia. How are you?
She can't hear you, but because we're trying to
Oh,
balance all the things
you are
like her
correct.
need to hear.
Hello. Hi, Khia. How are you? We
Her
have the
name
same
is
name.
Her name is Miss
Oh my
Khia.
goodness, she's so
Thank you.
How are you guys?
Oh, I am okay. We're here. I'm recentering. It's just mom life, just like running around trying to get all the pieces together, and I'm like, I'm good.
Actually, it's pretty loud. I'm sorry about that.
Oh no, you're fine.
Okay, I can definitely hear you better now. What were you saying?
Just mom life, just trying to balance all the things, and I'm excited. I'm here, but it's just like we have 2 minutes. Let's get the snacks together.
Yes.
Khia.
Yes. I literally have
Hi,
bread
baby.
sitting right here for when she decides that it's time for snacks.
Yeah, because she just finished dinner, but I'm like, I'm already knowing. I already know how it goes. So we have things ready to go that are in arm's reach.
Yes. I'm just hoping she doesn't run in here like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't have time for that at this exact moment, but.
Mm-hmm. No, that's mine. As soon as I hop on video, she's like, I'm like, girl, this is not the attire for that.
Nope, not this time, mother.
So how are you?
I am good. I'm nervous because usually if I have like a live or something, it's pre-recorded. So, yeah. But
We're gonna
I'm
do it.
excited
We're gonna
to
rock
do
it
this
out.
with you.
Yeah,
Your
I'm
work is
excited
honestly
too.
incredible, and I'm just really excited to talk about it with you.
Thank you.
Of course. So kind of just introducing ourselves. I'm gonna go ahead and let you start, and introduce yourself first.
Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Dasia. I am a mommy of one. She just turned 2 in January. Yes, it's a rocket. She likes space and rockets, so she'll be mentioning that periodically. I'm also married. Okay, awesome. Married to my best friend. We've been married for 3 years now. I am a birth and a postpartum doula, which we'll touch on more in a moment. Hey, look at me. So if you want to do all that, step right there for mom, okay? Okay. Okay. Would you like to sit with me? Because remember when we talked about that quiet time? I'm going to try my best.
Take your time.
Would you like to sit with me? Love, look at mama. Okay. Mommy of one, married within 3 years. We'll touch more on all of the doula and birth work stuff, but I am also prior military, so I was in the Air Force, and I separated a couple of years ago now. What else? I live in North Dakota. That's the military thing, not by choice. We don't plan to stay here long. We're actually going to be relocating, so all my Georgia people, I'm coming back to Georgia, whoever's in Georgia. Yeah, that's kind of like what I do where I'm at. Other than that, I like YouTube a lot. That's a random tidbit. I like doing yoga. That's a little bit about me. Oh, goodness, God. Okay. Yeah, so finish because I interrupted when you were just about to introduce yourself.
No, it's perfectly fine. Honestly, I was nervous, so letting you go first is also just helpful in this particular moment. But my name is Khia. I consider myself a birth keeper. I'm still kind of in the early stages of really learning how to be a doula, and so in that, I'm kind of trying to find my own path. And how I want to approach it. So being a birth keeper just feels more natural to me. It feels more encompassing of like the sacredness that I hold when it comes to this space. And yeah, I'm a mother as well. Me and her father, this whole family stuff is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I just, it's completely different too than what you expected. Like, I don't know where you expected for this to be, but it is completely different than what I expected it to be.
Most definitely, yeah.
There's way more peace in it than I thought there would be. That was surprising. Even in the chaos, you still kind of find like the balance of everything. And like, even in the moment that you just shared with your daughter, like, I love those moments so much. Like, they're so moving just to be able to like have the moment in your day to like, my daughter needs a hug right now, and that's okay. And not having to apologize for it too, which I'm very, very happy for. Because like, especially in this space of like working from home and everything, you hear people apologizing for background noise all day. And it always kind of hurts a little bit when people have to apologize for their children, because they're children. Let them be children. It's okay. We can all take a moment to appreciate how they're able to navigate their emotions. So I'm glad that that was an opportunity that Khia gave us.
Having to remind me about me, right? Because it's not really about her and what she needs to do. It's me needing to take my moments, you know. So definitely.
And that's also extremely true as well. And like the ability that you have to like navigate that boundary for yourself. That's also something I'm learning. I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm learning it.
Okay, I'm working on it. Don't let it fool you. These lives, this be when I be like, this is helping me a lot. I'm growing a lot.
Yeah. I completely agree. Being in this space of working with Neva, with Where's Neva and Geneva in general, is just really giving me an opportunity to take that time for myself in some capacity and just be able to do the things that I like to do, which is just like hold space for other people and the amazing things that they're doing, and be able to make sure that people are aware of the stuff that we have to navigate too as doulas, because we don't really talk about that as much either. Like, we talk about like, yes, you need a doula, but more recently especially, I'm just glad that people are talking about this in a more detailed way of like, what are you really going through? What do you really need when you're looking for a doula? What do doulas really do? You know what I mean? And like the variations as well is something that I'm learning and enjoying to learn, because I was a little concerned at first about like, is there only a specific way to be a doula? Being able to learn that like, that's not true. Everybody who is called into this work in a specific way at a specific time, to do what we do and in the way that's unique to us. And so when I saw your work, I was like, oh, we need to talk to her. We need to work with her. So yeah, I'm just glad we have this opportunity as well.
Yes, me too.
Absolutely. So where would you like to start, or did you want me to kind of lead?
You lead. I'm gonna follow you. Yeah.
So where did your doula journey begin for you?
So I got trained, actually, like formally trained right when my daughter was born. She was 2 months old at the time. I don't think I was familiar with actually what a doula was or what a doula did until my own pregnancy, when I was like, I knew that I wanted to do things a certain way, but the information that was handed right to me was very, pick your doctor, here's the hospital. It was kind of just like, this is what you do. And I was searching for things I didn't have the words to, like midwife, like a doula. So anyways, fast forward to having my own doula and my birth experience. I came into it 2 months after she was born, which in hindsight, which I think this is where all the layers come into play. That can be a good and a bad thing when people come into the work from their own birth experience. So I won't go too far there right there, but my own birth experience definitely like catapulted me into, yes, like I want to be doing this. I need to learn more about the pieces I was missing.
Absolutely. I completely resonate with all of that. And in the experience of taking on clients and things like that, what were some of the things that you were pleasantly surprised by, as far as like just being a part of the birthing community in general, being a part of birth work, experiencing what we see in the hospitals?
So pleasant things, just different things that people were needing. Like everything wasn't the same. It would be a first time mom and her husband, and I could see so much of myself in their situation, or it would be a third time mom who's like, I don't really need, all the informational stuff. I just need you to remind me that I can do this. Um, just to seeing the different variations and meeting people where they're at, because you touched on that a little bit about getting trained and coming into the work and kind of seeing how other people were doing things and like, okay, one, what do I bring to this? And also, everybody's not going to need the same thing from me.
Yeah.
So that I looked at it as a pleasant surprise and not as, because initially I felt like it was, what if I don't know, I remember my very first birth that I attended and like physically was there. She didn't want to be touched at all.
Okay.
And a lot of the work that we are trained in usually is like, here's how to do a hip squeeze and here's, how to use a rebozo or whatever. She didn't want to be touched. So things like that, I chose to view it through the lens of that's what that person's needing. And if she felt empowered and like her birth went the way that she wanted it to go, I did what I needed to do,
Yeah. No, I completely understand. And I feel that as well. I think that's another thing that I think I was pleasantly surprised by was the versatility you have to have and like the ability to just kind of like decide or sense like this is the right thing for me to be doing right now for this person. And even seeing when that may need to change. And being able to go into someone's birth and not really being were you fully prepared that she wasn't interested in being touched? Like you guys had the conversations already about that, right?
I had heard from someone close to her. So it wasn't a complete surprise, but still when you're in that moment and you want to help somebody, it's like, I know what to do to help that, contraction or whatever. One thing I was about to say, did we touch on, for people who aren't sure yet, what a doula is or what a birth worker
Actually,
is?
we completely bypassed that. I'm so sorry. I'm like,
No, I was thinking about it. I was like, hold on.
I'm glad that you stopped me because no, that is extremely important. Did you want to start with your definition and then I can get with mine as well?
Yeah, so for me, when I came into the work hearing and what a lot of people say now, usually when somebody's like, what's a doula is? A doula is someone who provides physical, emotional, mental, spiritual support to a person in labor. And that doesn't always paint a clear picture still. It's kind of like, okay.
Right.
So for me, I've had to see what it means to me. So what I choose to say now is that I want to take people or help take people from a place of fear and the unknown and the doubt to a place of being empowered and confident and joyful as they approach their birth experience and helping them to build those pillars. So we talk about the pillars, but really helping them to build those pillars, the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, because all of those shape the birth experience. So that's kind of my what a doula is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, completely agree with all of that. I am in a different place. So I have taken a few courses and kind of checked in with people who have taken other ones and just kind of wanted to see what they were based around. And a lot of things that I just do in my life in general are based around feeling like, does this feel right? Or am I in the right alignment for what I'm supposed to be doing right now? And so in that, like, there's so much growth and so many like moments of transition. And so I started off with like the exact definition that you're talking about. And I'm coming to find as like my knowledge of this practice evolves and my own like growth as a mother and trying to like walk this like womanhood journey and like walking away from like the girlhood and like those kinds of things. I'm figuring out that like there's different kinds of doulas, right? There are people who are going to be taking lots of clients, who are going to be helping in the hospital specifically. There are some people who don't help in hospitals, who only help in home birth situations or birth centers. I'm learning there are death doulas. There are of course, bereavement doulas, of all different kinds, and everyone has their own specialties and everyone has their own like philosophy on the way that they practice. And so exploring that, I'm starting to see that for me, my doula work is going to be, at least at this point, is going to be based around finding creative ways to share our stories, right? And to share our experiences and to be able to have the knowledge of a doula and learning the medical aspects as well, but also being able to focus on like bringing the humanity back into this work, right?
Absolutely.
Because we go into these birthing situations in the hospital, we go into these birthing situations in our communities in general, just because being a pregnant person. And there's just so much misinformation that everyone has about how this is supposed to work, and how truly natural and organic this process has always been, and how it was taken out of that and forced into this other space of like medical industrialism, basically, right? And somewhere along the lines, like the humanity was lost, right? Probably somewhere along the lines of the things that Marianne Sims did, but you know, when the foundations of how we birth in the hospitals, that story isn't filled with the love and the respective creation and just the traditionalness of what we're doing. Like this happens all the time, all day long. Like it is a very natural process. And the way that it's just been taken out, like finding a way to effectively tell that story and be able to counteract all this fear that gets thrown on pregnant women, on pregnant people in general. But don't let you be like an LGBTQ plus person. Don't let that happen, because they give you even more of a hard time.
Completely dismissed. Yeah.
And so just wanting to share everyone's stories, right, in a way that they feel exemplifies what they've experienced, because the more that we're able to do that and the more that we're able to see how people are actually like experiencing things, several things will happen. People will start to be able to address their birth trauma, which will be able to help them heal.
Identify that it was trauma.
Identify that it may have been. And even if it wasn't as traumatic as someone else's, what if yours is something that nobody has ever even researched before, but nobody knows because you haven't even had the time to decompress because you don't have the knowledge, right? Or even just someone sharing their story with you could have you feel like, I'm learning something from this. I'm gonna have to figure out I'm gonna have to go find a therapist, somebody to talk to work through this and find a way to heal through it, because people are gonna continue to have babies, right? Like that's never going to stop. The problem is that when we have so much fear around it, that fear just creates problems. And so wanting to find a way to find a balance between like being a doula and supporting families, but also being able to elevate and uplift these stories so that we can hopefully change this narrative about birth. You know what I mean? Like I honestly, speaking of myself, because that's the best way to go about this, right? Is sharing our experiences, but also tying it back to self so that we're relatable, because you're not going to trust somebody you can't relate to, right? You're not going to be able to connect with somebody you can't relate to. So when I was younger, honestly didn't know if I wanted to have a family. I was scared, like just very scared. And all of the preconceived notions I had around birth and how that process works can make you really bitter towards that whole mothering experience. And so reflecting back on it now, I'm doing a lot of just like growth around that, wow, like I really did not understand. And I was not equipped, you know what I mean, with the knowledge that I have now. And there are so many people walking around not equipped with this knowledge. And so I'm just glad that we're in spaces where we're open to accepting the call to this work. We're open to sharing our stories, and being able to help these families get through this experience intact and supported and loved, right?
I'm getting like I get tingles, like I get chills, but then my head tingles sometimes when you were talking about what it means to you and with sharing stories, because there are several people on my Facebook timeline who are not pregnant, not necessarily planning for pregnancy, but when I share things that are story based, when I share things that are story based and that they listen to those, they're taking those things in way more than maybe any of the statistics that I could say about anything. So that's powerful. That's so powerful.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so I mean, now that we're kind of moving towards what we kind of understand the doula to be, right? I want to move into the process. So, like, I'm pregnant, I'm looking for a doula. Like, what would the person need to go through? So, with you specifically.
Okay, yes, me, because I was about to say
yeah,
a whole bunch of different things. So if somebody is looking for me, if someone was going to bump into me, a lot of the things that I do here on this internet space.
I'm going to close this door real quick.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So a lot of what I'm sharing, a lot of the way that I'm trying to connect with people before I'm just saying back to, here, come work with me. I want people back to getting to know me and getting to see, is this a good fit? So a lot of the things that I'm sharing is a lot of education, is a lot of storytelling. So usually people find me that way. They're reading something, social media. I'm very heavy on here on Instagram and sharing things. And so if they're resonating with some things, then they, reach out, and they might be looking for in-person support, which with this transition, since I'm moving, I'm doing a lot of virtual support. Mm-hmm. And that even, again, these layers of things. Traditional doula work, or what people may think of doulas, back to being in person, being in the hospital or wherever that birth space is, of being hands-on. I think sometimes we miss the part of that. Okay, mommy's right here. Do you want to come sit with me? I said no. Okay. I know, that's upsetting. You can come sit with me. Look at you.
Hello. You got lungs like my baby. She did the same thing.
Okay, you're trying not to flash everybody on here.
It's okay, you won't. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be
Neva said, what kind of stories do I share? I share stories about a lot of my own personal experience. Not too much of people that I've worked with, obviously not personal details, but a lot of my own personal experience, just because, like, I know I've been there. So aside from me speaking from a professional standpoint, it's like, I know what that feels like to be in the unknown. I know what that feels like to even prepare for birth and then still be surprised by some things that you didn't
expect to happen. Yeah.
But yeah, just as far as the people that I work with, a lot of it is just, people are bumping into me. I don't think they're always looking for, again, a doula specifically. They're just kind of like pregnant. Mm-hmm. And then they pop on my page and they're like, what is this? What are these options that I have, Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of the way that I meet a lot of people, is really through Instagram. It's really through here.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the stories. We talked about the process, right? At which phase do you feel like you're at your strongest as a doula?
That's a good question. Because the funny thing is, like, the people that I've supported, like, when it's actually coming down to the birth aspect, like when we're actually in labor, and the different types of doulas, yes, we can touch on that. Mm-hmm. When I'm actually supporting someone in their birth, I feel like I'm at my best, and when I'm in my zone with all the preparation that we do up front. That's also a misconception, that a lot of people think that doulas, like, we're just showing up to the hospital on the day of the baby being born, and I'm like, no, there's so much. Are you getting up, love? My goodness, there's so much up front. Are you? Ooh, yeah, that's a lot. There's so much upfront work that goes on. I feel like that's when I'm really in my zone is preparing the family, preparing the person who's going to be giving birth so that when it comes down to it, there doesn't have to be too much of the thinking brain going on, right? Like we've done so much work up front and we've prepared so much, the partner has prepared so much that there is not too much that needs to happen in that moment as far as here are your options and what do you think about this, and that like they're so in their zone that things just we're in sync. So I would say that preparation up front is crucial. I don't want to say even more so than the actual birthday, but it's like anything that you're practicing or preparing for. It's a lot more practice and preparation that's going into things than just the day itself.
Right. Yeah,
Oh,
that's wonderful. And the reason why I was asking, because I was reflecting a lot recently as well about just at what point did I feel like in the class that I've taken so far, like that I felt like I had the strongest impact. And I would agree, it's definitely a lot of the those prenatal conversations that you have before labor, and just like overall connecting with them too, because that is very important to be able to have like that. And I use the word intimacy just because of what it really does mean. And it's just your ability to connect with that person in a way where they're comfortable, they feel safe, they feel heard, they feel seen. And that doesn't have to just extend to your significant other, right? It can be platonic as well. And it's an excellent tool to use in the birthing space.
And people aren't always getting that. I find that a lot. People aren't always somebody just stopping to listen to what they're talking about. So it's hard for me to relate when somebody's like, oh, what kind of support are you actually offering? The intangible part of emotional support, of spiritual support, if someone's open to that, is the part that a lot of times, like those most crucial things that I can't put into words until, you've experienced it.
Absolutely. And as we're talking into kind of like the different experiences you can have with different doulas and things, what are some of the different kinds of doulas that you're familiar with?
So I am familiar with, even before you get pregnant, a fertility doula who is going to be just helping you get your body right, whether that's with different type of foods, a lot of natural ways, holistic ways that you can prepare to conceive. So preparing for pregnancy and birth before it's even happening, which is amazing.
Yes.
And then, your traditional, like a birth doula is not just for the birth. They're with you during pregnancy as well when you're having different symptoms. Things leading up to the birth itself. And then postpartum doula. So I do postpartum work as well.
Right.
There's not, I don't know if there's a word for like a motherhood doula, but I do a lot of just like motherhood work as a whole. Right. A lot of the work that I do with preparing people for birth is really like not even just, hey, these first 6 weeks, this is what's going to happen, but no, like everything that you're doing right now is impacting this long-term relationship that you have, not only with your child, but with yourself as well.
Absolutely.
So like motherhood, I'll figure out a word for that, but like motherhood doula, like this ongoing thing. And then you do have bereavement doulas, death doulas who are working with people who have experienced loss, whether they do know that leading up to the actual birth or if something has happened in that moment and they're needing to reach out. That's what I'm familiar with. Is there any other ones?
Yes, I'm trying to
come on, baby. Come sit with me.
No, in this particular moment, I can't think of any additional ones, but I'm sure that if there are any that we can come up with afterwards, we can just add them in the comments or something like that.
What's going on? What do you need?
Hi.
Would you like some snack? You want some fishes? Would you like some snack? What's going on? I don't know, y'all. I don't know.
It's okay. I'm trying to think of it. So there any other questions before we move on?
Oh, an abortion doula. Mm-hmm.
Correct. That is true. There are also abortion doulas as well. I've actually been following a few because I wanted to learn more about it, and I think it's extremely necessary, and I'm so happy that people are actually moving forward with like taking up this space. Because just seeing the level of work that they put into supporting these mothers and their experiences, and these birthing people in general and their experiences, it is very moving. It is very moving, and I'm really, really looking forward to hopefully at some point getting one of them on here to talk to, just because I can't express it as well as they could, but it is definitely very needed work. Did you want to run through the difference between a midwife and a doula?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. Thank you so much.
Sweet. Be let us sweet baby feelings.
Take a step. Take a step over so you don't trip. You see? Yeah, so for anyone who may be expecting now or in the future who is planning on giving birth, I mean, you're going to give birth, but to know, first of all, that an OB, a doctor, is not necessarily the only thing. So when we talk about your options and stuff, a lot of times that's just what's presented, like, oh, go pick your OB. And so you think like, okay, like that's just what you do. But a midwife is a person who is trained specifically, they go to school specifically to learn about birth, to learn about physiological birth. So a midwife is medically trained, a medically trained person who is really providing the care to make sure that you're healthy, to make sure your baby is healthy during your pregnancy and during your birth experience. But the difference between, first I'll talk about them and an OB before a doula. So the difference between like an obstetrician and a midwife is that obstetricians go to school to learn about surgery.
Right.
So they're learning about high-risk pregnancy, essentially, and how to do things, life-saving things like cesareans, but they go to school for surgery. Whereas midwives, depending on the route that they take, but in general, whether they are in a hospital setting or if they did go a certified professional route and they're in a home birth setting, they go to school specifically to learn about the physiology of pregnancy, of labor, of birth. What is your body doing, whether you're trying or not?
Right.
And their care is very centered on you, centered on your experience, very unique to you. And they take a very, it's not an active management approach, but again, back to the layers, different hospital setting, home birth setting, but in general, they take a very step back approach and what you're needing versus an obstetrician a lot of times is going to take a very proactive over management approach sometimes.
Right.
So both of them, they are medically trained to help you birth your baby, whereas a doula, I'm not medically trained. I am not going to be doing any vital signs or anything to do with checking anything physically like that. Right. This is providing you education, support, back to that emotional support as you prepare for birth. I was touching on this before that a lot of people have this idea that their provider, whether it's an obstetrician or a midwife, is going to walk them through everything that goes on during labor. And that doesn't happen. And the nursing staff, that doesn't happen either. And it's not always like it's not a malicious thing of, I'm just going to keep something from you. They just have, in your prenatal appointments with them, they're not providing childbirth education, or they're not telling you all of your options just because of time, really. And also, unless you're asking those questions, if you don't know the questions to ask, they're just giving you the standard of care. So
that's actually very true.
They're giving you the standard of care. The standard of care right now for the U.S. in a hospital setting, just my personal opinion, is trash. It's trash.
I would agree with your personal opinion. That is mine as well.
Okay, so the standard of care is trash, which means if you don't know the questions to ask or that you can do differently,
they're not going to tell you.
You're going to get the standard of care. And so where we come into play, where doulas, birth workers come into play, is that I'm telling you these things, you know, like we're working for you to know all of these things that you might not have known before, to know that you do have options, that everything is not, this is what's going to happen to you. No, you're at the center of this whole experience, and you hired everybody in the room. Yeah, you hired your provider.
Yeah.
If I'm there, you hired me, your partner. Everybody is there for you. And so as a doula, I'm there to remind you about all those things and to help you get into the driver's seat of your experience, really. And that's the difference between what a midwife, who is going to make sure that you're healthy, make sure everything's going to course, and a doula is, how do you feel? Like, how did you feel in your birth experience? Are you leaving feeling like that you were empowered, that you had control over what was going on, regardless of if things went exactly to plan or not? Did you still leave feeling like we deserve options? Yes.
Absolutely.
Did you still leave feeling like I made informed decisions about my care, not that things were just done to me? So just restarting that for, yes, that's the difference though. That is where we're coming into play to really help you tap into what your desires are for your birth, and for you to not feel like it's just whatever happens, because it doesn't have to be that way. You know?
No, it absolutely doesn't. I completely agree with you. And yeah, we definitely do deserve options. And I think that that's also part of it as well, right? That I'm learning as far as like just being a birth worker in general, is that there's so many different pieces of this work, and like even just of being prepared for birth, right? So like, let's actually talk about that. So for example, what are some of the things that you felt like your birth that you were kind of like preparing for? So like, obviously you read some books, right? Obviously you went to your prenatal visits, took your prenatal vitamins. You said at some point, did you finally do the doula after? So it was just a prenatal, postnatal doula, or?
No, it was during my birth. It was about midway through.
Okay, got you. So yeah, honestly, about the same thing. It's very hard. That's another thing, is sometimes it's very hard to find a doula that you actually like truly vibe with. And that will definitely make or break your birth experience as a whole. You definitely want to find somebody that you resonate with. And like you were saying earlier in your experience, like people kind of find you, watch you for a while, look through your Instagram. Hopefully those people also looked at other doulas' Instagrams as well and decided that they chose you. But are there any other steps as well that you want to incorporate in that?
As far as people finding me, or as far as, tell me.
Sorry, so just as far as like trying to, sorry, I was double checking that question. I honestly lost my train of thoughts. Maybe we should just ask this question. Why do Black women need doulas? So why do Black women need doulas in your opinion?
Oh, let's get into the fun part. So everything that we've already touched on really applies to everybody.
Right.
That's what everybody needs to know. Black women, Black birthing people have this whole extra layer on top of everything that we just said, which everybody has going on, right? Like the standard of care is trash for everybody. But now the Black community, Black families have this extra layer on top of like racism. I mean, it's really, everything points back to racism. Even when we start looking at the numbers for things, which it was that Black people, Black women were 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth. But these statistics are up to 12 times more likely in, I believe it's New York, when it's high earning Black women compared to high earning white women, 12 times more likely. So when we're accounting for things like class, like income, geographical region, education, when we're accounting for all those things, you still have someone like Serena Williams having to be like, excuse me, what is going on? So on top of the system not being great for everyone, now we have this layer on top for Black people when it comes to all systems, when it comes to the education system, the police system, all these other systems that I don't think people are really looking at. The medical system, and specifically maternal health care, there's issues going on. And that when we talk about these statistics, I feel like in the past few years, people are getting more, like that statistic is not so surprising to some people. Like they've heard that before, but there's no context to it. It's kind of just like, oh, we're 3 to 4 times more likely to die. And some people can internalize that and take it as it's me. Something's going on with me, and that's why we're dying. And that's where the fear, back to this fear that you're talking about, comes into play, where it's like you're viewing birth as this toss up of like, I might make it, I might not win. Really, everything's pointing back to racism. So
yeah,
the Black community, the Black women are needing doulas, because if you don't have context to those things, if you don't have context to people like, who is James Marion Sims, who is this person in history wise, why are things the way that they are, what is currently going on right now, not 19 whatever, but 2021, what's currently going on. If you don't have context for those things, you're gonna get, first of all, like everybody's getting the standard of care. Not only are you gonna get the standard of care, but now on top of that, back to the racism. You don't know who's going to be, if you're in a hospital setting, you don't know who's going to be on call.
No.
You know, and so if you're not prepared and knowing your options, or even knowing that you can have a home birth if you want a home birth, at least start with that. Like, even before we start talking about interventions and stuff, that you can, a doula is needed for Black women specifically, because we're dying, and it's not just by happenstance.
It's not just by happenstance. I love that you said that. Yeah. No, I completely agree. Sorry, that's my garage. I'm gonna wait till that.
No, see, you've had minimal stuff. My daughter's over here like jumping off of. It's like, do your thing. Do what you gotta do.
I'm honestly very surprised that she has not busted in here yet. Normally, she just opens the door. But another one of the reasons too was what they're pointing to as well in the comments is a voice. That doulas and birth can provide a voice and to be an advocate for them. For us when we're in those situations, right, and encourage us to be advocates for ourselves, right, because we can't do all the work for you. At the root of this, at the heart of this, you have to be able to advocate for yourself first, right? And we double down on that and make it safer for you. Another thing too that I've recently kind of made a connection to, and I was doing some research on a birthing center for a client, right? And I had spoken with one of the people who, I don't remember what their position was, but one of the main people who helps you kind of like navigate if you want to choose that place or not. And so one of the things that kind of came up was just kind of, and I don't know if I can't recall if I actually said this or not at the time, but I remember talking about it with my partner after, and just that like, one of the unfortunate things when it comes to racism in the hospitals is that there is like the overt things, right? Mm-hmm. There's the covert things, and then there's the subconscious things, right? The subconscious things are the ones that are actually super dangerous, because you think you're trying to help someone because your knowledge is really based in surgical care and not truly based in how the physiology of birth, like in practice, works. And that's inclusive, that's holistically, right? It's not just what is your body physically doing, what is all of you doing. And if you're not able to see that, if you don't have someone next to you who can support you while you navigate exploring that and being able to advocate for yourself, is going to be harder than it has to be. And I think in a way too, we're kind of bringing a level of community back into the birthing experience for people, and that village mentality of like, y'all don't have to do this by yourselves anymore, right? Like, there are people out here who are happy to walk you through as much as we can, and if we can't do it, we'll find somebody for you who can, as best as we can. But you still have to do the work, right? There's another question in here. How is it being a Black mother and a doula, and what is the experience for us both? You go. I'll happily let you go first.
Okay. Wow. So I mentioned that I'm here in North Dakota. So my doula training, I was with, I don't remember how many, let's say another 8 to 10 other women, other white women. And, you know, okay, I'm in North Dakota. That's expected, whatever. But, my experience initially, until I came to this understanding that everybody's not for me and I'm not for everybody. So even when we talk about what does a doula do, that doesn't mean that my sign is open and whoever's pregnant, like, come my way, because I might not be the best fit for you and you might not be the best fit for me. And so me being in this position of service to others, have experienced so many microaggressions doing this work that what was it, September or October of last year, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I literally was questioning altogether, like, I don't know if this is for me, if I'm supposed to be helping someone center themselves and their experience, but I'm not about to lose my dignity in the process of it. So I will say that, like, my initial time trying to find my footing back to what does it mean to me to do this work, and me acknowledging being okay with that doesn't mean that I have to support everyone who's pregnant. That's not what that meant. So being a Black doula in a predominantly, overwhelmingly white state has been an interesting intro into the work for that reason. That I'll give a little tidbit. I won't go into the full story, but it was someone who I supported in her birth experience, who was really happy with how everything came out. She felt joyful. She felt like things went the way she wanted. Fast forward to when the world was on fire last summer, when George Floyd was murdered, when Black people were dying, when protests were happening, and a lot of us, but me specific, like, I was in a state of anxiety when my husband was walking out the door, like, is today the day? In a real state of just completely drained of all of my energy. And so at this point, this person was 6 months postpartum. This birth experience had happened a while ago, and she was kind of wanting to just hang out, and she was kind of not really acknowledging, like, the world is on fire right now, and just kind of asking me for different things and wanting to hang out. And I was very nicely like, hey, and I said it very straightforward. I didn't skirt around the bush. I said, hey, me and my family are in a state of trauma right now, and we're needing time to rest, to reset. She went on Facebook and wrote, like an essay's book worth of hate speech, saying that I was a danger to people in their birth experience, that I was a danger to them in their postpartum experience, that no one should work with me. And I sat with things, and even as I, like, even reflecting time, when at that moment I was like, with the way that I handled the situation, I was like, aside from what she actually did, why was that so triggering for me? Because usually I'm a person like, I know what I did, I know what I didn't do. If you're mad, you're mad. I'm like, why is that so triggering for me? But when we even talk about the history again of birth work, when we talk, and I'm not gonna cry, but when we talk about the history of birth work, and we talk about the hate that was, the smear campaign, everything that was done to these Black midwives, these grand midwives, who were catching everybody's babies, not just the Black community's babies. They were catching everybody's babies. And because people wanted to move birth to the hospital to make money, that they decided to smear lives over women who were doing this work, who was just in them, and decided to say that they were dangerous, that they were killing babies, that they were letting mothers pass. And I had to take some time, months later, and I was like, but why was that so triggering for me? I'm like, this is in me, like, this is in my blood. This is the work that I do. So it wasn't just the fact of her saying something that wasn't true or an unhappy client. This was like, no, this, no, we're not repeating history. You can't, no.
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not.
So that was a little bit of my introductory into the work, was like me already having to fight. Like, so I'm in a different space now, because I've chosen to take time to really see what I'm going to bring to this work, and how do I want to show up. Please share. You share.
Yes. No, thank you so much for saying that, because I, every time I talk about the grand midwives, I just get, there's so much rage that just turns into tears, and just even hearing that you had that experience just compounds that for me. And that's also why I'm trying to like find my own space in this work, because I don't do well with things that don't make sense. And that didn't make sense. What they do to us in these hospitals don't make sense. Aspects of my own birth didn't make sense. And the rage that I have is ancestral.
It is.
It is ancestral rage when it comes to this work, because you get into this space and you hear these women's stories, and you hear the stories of these grand midwives, and you hear the malicious intent that they had to steal this work from where it originated,
and to sell it back, to take.
And a lot of these women died poor, and were unable to take care of themselves because of the amount of physical energy it takes to put into this work. Right? And I can only imagine if you got a taste, right? You got a taste of what they experienced.
A small hateful taste. Facebook post.
And this brings me to my other thing, is that I struggle sometimes with even calling myself a doula, because when we talk about the origins of the word, it means servant or slave. And I mean, you say servant, but you know what you mean. You mean
present day,
right?
And
at the time, it was the slaves that they were just taking, like, oh, you know how to do this? Cool. These babies are safe with you? Cool. So come make sure that you take care of my wife too. And just when you understand how sacred this work is, and when you watch these women transform in front of your eyes, and when you hear the stories of these women and you experience it for yourself, especially being a mother in this work, the spiritual journey it takes you on in order for you to be the best doula that you can be for other people, it is a lot. Nobody tells you, like, people are like, oh yeah, like being a doula, you know, like you think they obviously don't say that it's going to be great all the time, but like you share people's experiences when they are being vulnerable with you, right? And so and honestly, if you're not good at working on it, you sometimes take those things on, right? And so needing to learn how to have good boundaries, and having the ability to say, okay, I need to focus on my child right now and my family right now, and wanting to find a way to find that balance of still doing the work, because the work needs to get done. Right. But there comes a point where you recognize that, like, this is not this is not like a sprint of just how many clients can you take, you know what I mean? How many people can you support? Like, I'm learning that this is like, when you step into the sacredness of it, this is really truly a lifelong journey that you're choosing to walk with these people. And so that's why it's very important for us to, like, not only know ourselves and work on our own things alongside what we're supporting these people to do, but like also being able to know when to take breaks, and know when to slow down, and know when to be like, well, I can't answer this phone call right now because I know that they're gonna talk my ear off. And so set a boundary, and being able to still be able to communicate that well, right? And not in a way that's that comes off too harsh or anything like that. Like, just being able to expound on those firm boundaries, and learning how to do that for your children in the process too, right? Like, all of these things, all of these aspects of creation are all tied together. And so learning to be a doula, learning to be a mother, like, to some effect, they go hand in hand if you welcome it, if you surrender to it. That's also part of it. There's this level of surrendering to birth that we just don't talk about enough. You see it on TV, or you watch somebody's birth video or whatever, but there is like a very deep spiritual surrendering when it comes to allowing someone else to come through you and to be born into this world, and having the respect for that, and bringing that back into this birthing stage is 100% what we're trying to do here. It looks like there's another question. How do you give yourself space to show up for yourself and others? Go ahead.
Khia. It's what you just said, back to knowing when to step back. Knowing when to step back. I think, and I even think I know, as a society, we're pumped so much of this hustle culture, like, go, 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 do, you know. Yeah, the way that sometimes doula work is positioned, you're like, how can I get the most clients when I'm coming out of this training? It's this hustle culture, but I'm not a machine, you know. I'm not a machine. And so in the same way that I want to prepare someone and let them know that it's okay to center themselves and their birth experience, I have to practice that. Like, I have to make sure that I'm practicing exactly what I'm telling other people by taking those steps back. Not like I don't have to work with everyone one-on-one. Oh my goodness. Khia, can we do a little bit quiet time? Knowing when to step back. I would say that's the main thing about supporting others and myself, because my personal situation, my husband's on the road a lot. He's gone majority of the month, so it's me, my daughter, taking care of the house, and I'm supporting people. Like, I'm still doing this, but like, this is not let me give from an empty cup. Back to this, if we're talking about giving from my overflow, this work has taught me so much about me taking care of me. I've done so much internal work. So I will say that that's how I've like been doing the balancing, the juggling of everything. It's like, I've done so much internal work. I've done so much internal work since becoming a birth worker, and everything is tied together. It really is. What you just said, like, my husband gets on me about this, but when he's talking about random stuff, I always tie it back to birth, because I'm like, everything, it all is tied together.
It does. It does. And I definitely agree with you. I think that there is this, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like from what I'm observing, other doulas are experiencing this as well, of like this sense of needing to bring, like I said earlier, the community back into the space, right? And so some of the things, so part of the reason why I, on my personal page, call myself the Afrofuturist doula is because part of my philosophy for how I do this work is about how can we dream something better for birth?
Ooh.
Like what can we do to be able to do that? And so I know that at some point, a part of that is strengthening the community that we do have amongst doulas. And so I did hear earlier, you said you guys are moving to Georgia again. And I definitely love that, because there's a huge community of birth workers, Black birth workers, especially down there. And so like, my hope is that as we're all coming into this work, especially those of us who kind of were triggered by the pandemic, especially, to just put the hat on and just get to work. I'm hoping that like, as we build these connections amongst other mothers and things like that, we strengthen the community that we have amongst birth workers, because one of my, actually where I got this sweatshirt, the Chicago Birth Works Collective, I believe, they are very inspiring to me. Just the way that they navigate, and my own doula cohort especially is very inspiring to me, in the way that we all just navigate supporting each other, right? And just even from afar, like, I may not have access to you, but I did see that this thing in your city is giving like a farmer's market or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, do you want to go, or like meet up and try to go to this or something like that? Or I think it's definitely going to encourage, as we get more into this space of taking care of ourselves first, right? And like applying that self-care, that we compound that with pouring that into each other when we do have it, because there's a lot of burnout amongst all of us, right? Especially because of this pandemic. Like, the stuff that we're seeing is exhaustive. And I just feel very strongly about, like, as we're learning to navigate this community aspects, that we are very intentional about expanding these networks that we have, because there's also an acknowledgement of, if we're not safe in the hospitals, then where are people going to start going? They're going to start birthing in their homes. And so if people are birthing in their homes, there are plenty of people that I heard of who have been birthing in their homes by themselves and with the support of a doula. And while we do say that they don't provide medical care, there are some doulas, and typically they may be student midwives and things like that in training, or something along those lines, or just may have a historical experience with this and just know it well, right? Like, there is still spaces for women who don't feel safe, who don't have resources, to find ways to do it safely at home, because originally that's what we were doing. You know what I mean? And like, also,
the body knows.
the body knows, right? And so as we're kind of navigating these spaces of like taking care of ourselves, we don't forget those women, right? We don't forget ourselves. But we also find like release in the community aspects of this and finding ways to grow not only the network but our support amongst each other. And that will help us not only take care of ourselves, but if, you know, I know you done had about 3 or 4 births this week and you barely spend your time with your family, I'm gonna take that birth for you so that you can spend time and get your rest, because doing that, there are some people who are just doing this back to back, and then you see a couple months later there's a burnout, right? And some people leave the work because of the burnout. And so wanting to be cognizant of that, how I personally navigate it, because I kind of breeze through that, most of it is just like just taking care of myself and finding time, like forcing that time, like I haven't eaten yet, so let me make sure I eat something, right? Like even if it's just keeping stuff around you so that like you're snacking throughout the day, because you are doing so many different things. Like there was one time I was trying to finish a book and I didn't realize that I hadn't eaten for like 3 hours. And like if I had snacks around me, I would have been fine, right? I would have probably been snacking as I was reading. And so like I'm very intentional about finding ways to self-soothe and to find ways to like just be at peace with how busy things are. And like I have a full-time job still, so like even amongst all the things that I'm trying to learn and acquire, like I still have that to maintain to a certain level. And so yeah, just you have to find a balance. You just have to having some time to take care of yourself so that you can have something to pour into. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about that overflow earlier, and just pouring from that and making sure that you have enough to give.
I love what you said about what you're bringing into the work as far as envisioning something better. That's something that I've been wanting to do as well, with acknowledging what is, right? So acknowledging there's issues going on. There's a history of why we are where we are today, but also and this is where things can get, I don't want to say controversial, but I'm a little bit different in my approach when I'm working with people. It's not just, here's all the things that you don't want. Say no to this, guard off of that, because birth is so much, back to the surrender, is about surrendering. It's about not using the thinking brain. It's about opening and releasing. And so if I'm preparing you to fight, those are 2 different things that are happening, versus if I'm preparing you and we're working together, what do you actually want? Like starting there before we start talking about interventions, which we'll talk about the issues and the medical space. First of all, what do you actually want in your birth experience? And sometimes people are like, I don't know, I wanna, and I have to really tap into that. And I'm like, do you want to feel joy? Do you want to feel bonded and loving with your partner during that time? Like when we lean into these things that you do want, naturally the things that you don't want have to fall off. Stuff has to align.
Right.
So I love what you said about envisioning something better, right? Like taking the things that we do have, but also where are we trying to go? Like what can this be, or what has it already been, and remembering that, tapping back into that.
Absolutely. That remembering has been a very big thing for me lately. And just in this work in general, that it definitely does seem like, what am I trying to say? I almost don't even know how to fully explain it, because I think it's more of something that you just feel as experiencing being a mother. But there's like I myself, like when we talk about dreaming of something better, imagining something better, I know that individually there are these women all over everywhere that are having these ideas around, I wish I could have had this. You know what I mean? I wish this could have been better. Or I wish something like this existed. And the more that we're able to encourage each other to say things like that, the more that we're able to find the people who can do the thing that you just said. You know what I mean? And so I definitely, I'm very much about trying to find a way to dream something better for this birthing space. And even for ourselves too, like I definitely push that as well, of just be in this experience, surrender to this experience in the best way that you can. And in that, like, acknowledge yourself, right? Like all of the things that are coming up that like may be somewhat painful, the things you may have to grieve or integrate about yourself along this process, like lean into those things, right? Those things that are very hard to navigate emotionally. Find support in your community, definitely. I definitely encourage any birthing person to have a therapist. There are a lot of people now, especially who are offering their services for free because of the pandemic or at a lower cost or a sliding scale. And that's doulas included. Like birth workers, we're really just trying to help you guys get to the point where you can birth in a safe, cared for, loving space and be able to experience that first moment of meeting your child in a way that doesn't make you reflect and feel like, oh, I wish I would have had this, right? Right? So, this is definitely great. I'm really glad that we're talking about these things. I'm not sure how long this goes till, but is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you really wanted to kind of speak about?
I feel like we touched on so many good things. One thing I will say back to this community aspect that you're talking about around birth workers, not just the expecting families, which that's part of it, but together we rise. Like the more that we are having these conversations with each other, and what you said, where it doesn't have to be that you have the exact same philosophy and do the things that I do, where it's not friction there and it's not competition, right?
Yeah.
I'm not worried about moving to Georgia, to Atlanta specifically. There's a lot of people there, but I'm not worried about it because there's no competition when I know my mission, right? Like I know my mission, I know my purpose and why I'm doing this work. So the more of us, like you just said, if there's 3 or 4 people, we can do this together. This is not a thing of competition, right? But back to the community aspect, I'll add that piece that I have started trying to get into. What can that look like? How can I bring that? I have an account, back to Instagram, I have an account on here called Black Birth Pro, and I've been connecting with a lot of Black birth workers on there. Like it's so many people on there from all over the country, and trying to navigate what that looks like for me to show up in this way, and back to like bring us together more, because we're having pockets of conversations and stuff, but more, bring us together more. And for us to know that the more that we're together, the more that we rise and have conversations, everybody else is like tuning into what we're saying. And things are better when it's not just, I'm just trying to figure this out and do it on my own, but when I'm able to process with somebody. Back to the situation I was telling you about with my experience with the person who wrote that hateful letter book on Facebook. When I spoke to someone who kind of mentored me here, she's a white woman, her input on the situation was from a lens of being just specifically a doula. It had nothing to do, she couldn't give me anything as far as being Black, which is a layer to that.
Yeah.
So I had to talk to other people and be like, talk to me about this. Other Black birth workers, and be like, tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me or keep it real with me. Tell me, did I go about this the wrong way? So having that community for things like that, for us to process what we have going on as well, with the work, because it's heavy.
It's heavy work. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And that all definitely resonates as well. And I'm glad that you're creating spaces like that, like for us to be able to just commune with each other, right? And talk about these things. One of the things I was thinking about you when you were talking too is that as we're like coming together to tell these stories, right? If we come across like the stories of elders, uplifting those stories as well. Like there are still there's still some of these grand midwives are still alive, right? Like they may not have been able to do the work nearly as long, just based off of maybe when they were into it, but they're still alive and they're still, like they have stories to share with us. And so wanting to venerate those experiences as well, because one of the things that I'm learning, my very wonderful teacher, Sunny, taught me this, reminded me of this actually. That's the what is it? The maiden, mother, and crone energy, right? And so as we're talking of like honoring this aspect of creation by holding space for birth in this way, I'm learning that it is very necessary to have all aspects of us in the work, right? So talking about things and having our children present, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about things and being able to reach out to an elder who maybe have experienced some things completely different than you have, but it'll help you be able to navigate like the future of this work. Because like you said, we do have to reach back in order to be able to go forward, right? We can't just take what we have now in 2021. We have to venerate those pieces from before, right? The if we don't tell those stories, who's going to tell them? And if so, we can't allow that cycle of losing this knowledge for one to continue, because that's also a huge issue, is that there are so many techniques and things that people had just acquired that were never written down, and traditional practices as well that were never truly written down, that we need to explore again to make sure that that healing aspect of birth is considered as strongly as it should be. And like we're talking about spiritual aspects of this work, we have to reach back for them, right? And so holding space for that and encouraging that in this work and understanding the dynamics of that is also equally important in our ability to support these families, right? So trying to think of if there was anything else that we were supposed to touch on before.
I mean, the whole thing of healing, the whole space, this whole Where is Neva space of our healing is the legacy. Like, that's what we're leaving behind. When you touched on the part about, yes, having our children even listening to these conversations, my daughter knows, like, I can show her a model pelvis right now, and she knows that that's a pelvis, or she knows what a placenta looks like. Pelvis.
There we go, girl.
She knows, like, she points to my belly a lot and says, baby. I'm like, love, we're not right now, but yes. She knows these things, but her perception and her understanding about birth, I was just talking to my mom about this, and she's on this live, it's gonna be so different, right? And like that information that she has, that birth, my body knows what to do, that she takes with her, that she encounters other people, whoever her partner, if she chooses in the future, like for generations to come, how much of a ripple effect is happening when we are acknowledging, back to you said, bringing that humanity back to the birth experience. Again, this is like not just the birth itself and get the baby out, this rushed process. This stuff is like lifelong impact, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree as well. Some of the things I'm exploring to understand, like, I want to try to have a more holistic approach when it comes to this work. And so some of the things I'm exploring are like herbalism and astrology and things like that. And one of the things I'm noticing about astrology is that birth trauma came up in my chart. Like, I figured out what position that was in my specific chart based off of things that I was learning from other people. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, I wonder if there was a way for me to have navigated, or for my mother to even have navigated birth, or even her mother, you know what I mean? There's generations of women who have gone into these hospital spaces unknowingly experiencing things, and your body always remembers, right? You may forget because your brain wants to protect you from things, but your body remembers. And if your body's remembering and part of your brain is remembering and you're growing a human, there's a potential for that energy to still be in that child. And so when we're talking about healing through this birth work and healing through the way that we navigate it, we're helping so many people by doing this work, right? Like you said, generations of people are going to be healed and supported because of the work that we do. And so honoring that, reminding yourself of how sacred this work is, ensuring yourself that you're not overworking yourself, because sometimes we're taking too many clients and you're taking someone else's person. That person is better supported by somebody else other than you. And when we focus on capitalism in this work, or money in this work, how much better are we than the hospitals?
Right.
Truly. And so wanting to find the balance between this is work as well, right? That this is real work that we do, and that it does need to be compensated as well. Finding other ways as well to not only support each other so that we are properly compensated for this work, but that, like, some of these people who are seeing this birth trauma occur and are posting all these things about it, but they have a little bread to donate to somebody who's building a birth center. You know what I mean? There's one in Alabama that they're trying to build, right? That's actually in my bio as well. Dr. Stephanie, yes. Her work is incredible, and allowing people to allowing specifically Black women to reclaim this work by supporting them and compensating them for the work that they do, and being able to find other ways to support that so that we aren't as drained from this work is definitely really important as well. So there's lots of pieces of this, but so so absolutely. Make sure you check out our directory on Where's Neva. Dasia is featured there. Hello, beautiful. Oh, sweetie. And there's also more support specialists on there as well in different forms. There's many different pillars for you to choose from. And we definitely encourage you to take a look at that, and also take a look at the work that Dasia's been doing. It is very powerful work, a very important work. And we want to make sure we uplift and support her in that. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we close this out?
I'll do for anyone expecting in the summer, anyone who is expecting in the summer, who is looking for more education, more support, learning their options and wanting someone to give a little bit of guidance and looking for back to that community. I do have something coming up specifically for those expecting in the summer. It's we are almost done, okay? A birth circle coming up to explore all those things, to dive deeper into all this that we just talked about tonight. So, oh my goodness, okay. This is
It's always the foot for me. The foot is
and holding.
My daughter likes to put her feet on the wall and like stand a little bit and like maybe upside down. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
It's a lot. But yes, anyone interested in that, anyone interested in just learning more, I share so much on my Instagram, but specifically that is coming up. I'm excited for that because I have people all over the country. I have someone in Alabama, someone up here, more northern. So that is all. We touched on so much. I'm just so thankful to share space with you, though.
Absolutely. I'm so glad we finally got to meet. I felt kind of creepy at first because I was like, I really just thought this girl, and I really just felt like she just totally deserved to just have this space to be uplifted, because the work that you do is incredible. The level of vulnerability you share, and it allows other people to also experience those things with you and learn from you. So no, absolutely more than happy to share space with you. Very honored to share space with you and little Khia and her little foot. But no, this has been wonderful, and I'm thankful to you. I'm thankful for Geneva for giving me this opportunity. We are finna go, girl. So be right back, girl.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Bye.
Have a beautiful rest of your evening.
Yes,
and you all as well. Thank you all so much for joining us in this space.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye.